Okay, welcome back to part 3 of our ASP.NET Core MVC web app, where we've been creating a character counter app. We've created this website before in Angular. We're doing it again in ASP.NET Core MVC, talking about some of the basics along the way. And then once this is done, we're also going to transition and do the same thing, but in Flask. I just wanted to make the same web app 3 different ways. I thought it'd be a fun project. And if you want to look through all the videos, there's a playlist you can go through. That way you can follow along. And if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. That way you don't miss any in the future. It really means a lot to me. You guys have been killing it with viewership and subscriptions lately. I do appreciate it. It means a lot. And I think that's it. Let's just hop into it. So there's one thing I want to address at the beginning. And something that bothered me is when I was typing HTML out in this CS HTML in these Razor pages, it wouldn't complete the snippet. And by that I mean if I were to put a P for a paragraph and then hit tab, it wouldn't automatically have the opening and closing tags for me created like it usually does in like VS Code that I'm used to. And so I found a way that you can enable this. You can go to Tools, Options, go down to Text Editor, expand that, look at HTML, expand that, and then Advanced. And this legacy Razor editor for ASP.NET Core is what you want to set to true if you want to enable that. Then once you do, you also have to restart Visual Studio. But now if I put something like div, which is a valid HTML tag, and I hit tab, it'll create the open and closing tags for me, which is what I missed. Just a little FYI. But in this video, we're going to create a controller. And if you remember, by default, we were given a home controller. And in the last video, we added a new view called the About view, and then we linked it up in our home controller. And so in this example, I want to create another controller. I want to call it the data controller, and it can serve up different views from that controller versus using the home controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the controllers directory, right click, hover over add, and then we're going to add the controller, the top option here. I'm going to select the first one, MVC controller empty. We'll hit add, and then let's give it some kind of name. So instead of home controller 1, let's leave the controller, let's get rid of the 1 and say data controller. And then add. And then here we have an index by default. It added that for us. So let's create an index view for this data controller. Remember, we already have an index view for the home controller, and that's in this home directory and the views directory. So in the views directory, I'm going to create a new directory, and we'll call this data because it's going to correspond to the name of the controller. And then in this data directory, let's add a new view. And I'll also use the Razor view empty. And by default, it named it index.cshtml, which is great because that's what we're going to name it anyway. And then let's just add some random HTML. So let's put in H1. This is from the data controller. Or maybe I should say this is served from the data controller. And now if I start this app and we go to / controller name, in this case it's going to be data, and then / action, our action is going to be index, we should see this HTML right here. Let's see if that's true. So we go /data /index, and here we go. Here's that H1 I just created. So something else I want to talk about, you might be asking, okay, well, where does this HTML come from at the top? Because this is found everywhere. It seems like only the views are rendered in this portion right here, and that is correct. This is basically our template, so we have our nav bar at the top, and that's going to be found when serving any kind of view. And let's say we want to add a link that goes to the About view that we created in the last video. So if we go back to Visual Studio, I'm going to turn off the app for now. And if we open in the views, the shared directory, and we go to layout.cshtml, here is where we can find the template. And our views that get rendered get thrown where this render body is seen, right here. And everything else is the navbar and the other stuff, maybe the footer down below that we see whenever we see any kind of view. So up here is our navigation. Here's our list items with different nav items. So I'm just going to copy one of these nav items and paste it down below. And then we're just going to change a few things. You can see the ASP-controller is saying, okay, for this link, what controller is it going to look for an action in? So in our case, for the About page, it's going to be in the home controller, so we can keep that as home. But the action is going to be About, because that's the action method in the home controller that we want to link to. And of course, we want to change the text of this link to About, not privacy. We don't want two privacies, and then it doesn't even go to the privacy view. So let's serve it up now and see if that link, 1, exists and 2, sends us where we need to go. So if we hover over about in the bottom left, maybe you can see it, maybe not, it's /home/about is where it's going to take us. So if I click it, it then takes us to the about page, and this is how you can add links to the existing nav bar at the top. And then same thing if we also wanted to do another link. In this case, it's going to be the data controller, the new controller we just created, and then the index action. And we recompile this, and I forgot to change that to data, I guess we can say is the text. Let's recompile it again. Now we have a new data link. Notice it's sending us to the data controller, and it doesn't say /index because index, if we remember, is the default action. But it does end up sending us to the index action of the data controller, so it does work as intended. And that's all I wanted to show in this video. Create a new controller. We're also going to add to the nav bar different links to different actions on different controllers if we want to. And maybe in the next video, we'll start working on the actual app that we're trying to build, which is a character counter app. You throw in some string, and then it tells you how many characters are in that particular string. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this useful, and I hope to see you in the next video.